well, good evening, and welcome to this edition of the Countdown to the Bermuda Day Half Marathon Derby, which is only a mere, 4 days away? If you take away today, it's 4 days away. I'm your host, Earl Baston. Joining me is a former winner of the race, Mr. Mike Watson. Thank you, Mike, for joining this afternoon, this evening. Three-time winner, right?
Yeah, a four-time winner.
Four-time.
And nice to be here, Earl.
Yes. Four-time winner in Mike Watson. Well, Mike, I've been running these countdowns with former winners and some favorites already this year. And we've come to a portion of for you. Just take us through what specific aspects of Bermuda Day half marathon do you feel suited your running style best? I remember, during your college days, you were more 800, 1500, but you had to do some different things. And how did you adapt that training to capitalize on the strength to end up winning the race?
Yeah, well, one of the things that middle distance runners do, and when I say middle distance runners, I'm talking about those who specialize in the 800 or the 1500 meters, mile,
Yes.
that on the occasion may run the 3000 or the 5000. One of the big problems is we have the speed, but we need the added speed endurance. So we have the speed endurance, mind you, but we need to add to the endurance side.
Right.
And what tends to happen in something as long as a half marathon is we don't have the patience to realize in the beginning that maybe we need to pace ourselves rather than run out so hard the first half of the race.
Right.
And what tends to happen is because that we take a longer time to master the distance. And people always talk about the races I won without realizing the races I lost, experimenting and trying to learn how to run that long.
I remember those races.
Right. Yes. I mean, on occasion, I even had to stop because I had.
Right, I know.
Yeah, went through the miles in 4:30, which was unrealistic. Closer to 5:15, 5:30 would have been more realistic for me at my fitness level at that time or my endurance level.
Right.
But I would just make those mistakes because again, learning how to perform at that distance was a challenge usually for someone that's mile oriented. Now it doesn't mean that we can't run that distance because we do put in mileage.
Right.
Which is conducive to running that distance, which is why even on race weekend, you'll see some of the milers that come here are able to run a 10K or a half marathon.
Mm-hmm.
But being able, and even when we think about S1, who was a miler, who had to kind of change his training tactics and put more miles in as opposed to staying track focused.
Right.
So it's a challenge. But eventually I mastered it. I kind of got it down. It helped that I was being patient and following the pace of people like Cal Bean and Neil Matthews, who eventually I overhauled and had my turn to get a win in. And I think the year after that, I kind of figured, well, yeah, I could run at their pace and even faster. And I led from beginning to end.
Right.
The second time I did it. And then on the third time, because I was focused on overseas track.
Yes.
I'm still running track. So I was kind of hopping in and out of training for longer distances.
Right.
And I kind of, I think I had got beaten by Tony Ryan, triathlete. Yeah, who was more distance orientated.
Right.
But the very next year, I kind of ran away from him. Because I never did find him to be um, a real challenge, other than me lacking endurance.
Ah,
And then, of course, I went through a hiatus of tracks leading up to '88. Of course, made the Olympic team, being Bermuda's only runner to ever run in the Olympics at 800 meters.
right,
Uh, I kind of strayed away from May 24th. I still ran the race, but I didn't run as confident in the front or even win the thing until eventually when I had kind of decided to retire from serious track running, and in '91 I came out again and put in some work, especially
right,
on the endurance side, and although I wasn't training specifically for May 24th,
right,
I had the strength because I was building at the time, and I was running a wheelbarrow up and down, doing some excavating, and yeah, that was my kind of most of my training for that year. But I threw in some miles, and I kind of ran suicidal and pulled it off in
right,
'91. That's
right.
the year parents bought that guy, his college mate. And
Yes,
they kind of he instigated a fast pace with Terrence, and I
right,
kind of called their bluff and was able to pull it off. Um, they was talking about picking up the pace and running away from everybody, and I kind of questioned why they didn't do that. I was playing the same psychological game with them, and then I decided, what the heck? Let me take a chance and do it.
right,
And I took off, and they found themselves having to chase me. And I think they really thought I was, just being crazy.
right,
And finally, I think I had totally took away Terrence's confidence.
right.
But his roommate came chasing after me and caught me at Red Hill.
Yes.
And his mistake was he started to conversate with me again. Had he, had he run by me, he may have found I was more tired than he thought.
Right,
Yeah, but when he wanted to have a conversation about how I was feeling,
right,
I said, "Well, I'm feeling pretty good. I'll check you later." And I took off again. I don't know what I was thinking at the time, because really I was running on E.
right.
But lucky for me, we took the turn on Crow Lane Bakery, and the crowd
Yeah, yeah,
uplifts
yeah.
you.
Yes,
So
yeah,
I was running on fumes, but I was certainly being helped along by the crowd.
sure.
And I don't know what happened to Hess, was his name. I don't know what happened to him after that. I don't know if he pulled out because they told him he was an unofficial entry,
Right,
or
right,
he actually conceded. I really don't know. But
right.
I went on to win the race, and of course ran straight to the hospital uh, after that, because after that,
Needed
I
some
was
fuel.
100% dehydrated, and
Right.
yeah, as you say, I needed to refuel. That's for sure. Yeah, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And to your point, the Bermuda Day atmosphere is truly unique. And obviously, when you were doing it, trying to find your way, your I guess the energy that you was putting in. How did you harness that energy of the crowd, especially the crowd, and the significance of the day itself to fuel your performance? Once you figured out that you're not going to win the race in the first 5 miles because you still got another 8.1
yeah,
to go.
yeah. Well, you said it right. The crowd can make you feel extra good
Right,
sometimes, and like you said, you have to harness that and be realistic, and learn to run your race.
right,
When you're running middle distance, a lot of times, especially collegiate track,
right,
you tend to take off fast and try to hold it.
right,
And, a lot of times you'll do that, but then also you have to remember at some point in collegiate track, you have to reserve some energy, because always a big kickers involved in
Yeah.
college track. So, but the problem with a half marathon is, I mean, how the race is so long. How long can you reserve for a kick? You know what I mean? Sooner or later, the fatigue takes its toll on you,
Right.
and you have to time it right in terms of really having more of a patient pace
Right.
and being able to roll along. But a few times when I ran May 24th, I was kind of fit for it
Right.
and prepared in terms of the endurance. So I was confident to lead the race and run away from everybody.
Right.
And of course, you've seen Kevin do that. You've seen,
Yes.
East Wannick do that.
Uh-huh.
And I had my turn as well, where I kind of had my way. And that makes life a little easier because you tend to run your own race. You can keep the rhythm. There's no distraction.
Right.
Whether you finish with a sprint finish or not, you're so far in front a lot of times you can fartlek, which
Right.
means you can speed up and you can ease off. You can speed up and ease off in
Mhm.
areas you choose.
Right.
And that kind of takes the confidence away from the runner behind you because every time he thinks he's getting closer to you, he's actually getting further from you.
Right.
Because
Right.
when you have that moment where you speed up, you
Uh-huh.
seem to disappear on him. And of course, that could take away your confidence if you're running behind
Yep.
or you're chasing someone, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, one of the major things, is always the weather. Potentially heat, humidity, wind, rain, whatever. What was your how did you prepare? Because obviously you were running a lot in college, different temperatures and so forth. But Bermuda Day, generally that humidity, even if it rained, it was always high humidity, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes and no. Everybody's different.
Right.
On a few occasions, it felt humid, and I mean, if you go back to the stats back then, you'll find it was humid and hot. But to me, because I was fit, and I'm one to tend to like the heat,
Uh-huh.
um, I didn't always think that was my major problem.
Right.
Um, some I would wear a hat because you're coming out of the west, and I didn't like the sun in my eye.
Right.
But I didn't feel hot. It was just
Uh,
irritating with the sun being in your eyes.
right.
So I would wear a hat. And at some point in that race, especially where I knew I was dominant, maybe with 3 miles to go, I'd throw that, or a mile to go even, I'd throw that hat away.
Yeah, yeah.
But really, the hat was irritating me too. But it was certainly serving a good purpose in
Right.
terms of keeping the sun out of my eyes. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
And so yeah, the wind was more of an irritant.
Right.
If the wind was in your face, I like to run either no wind or run with the wind.
Right.
If it's a day when there's no wind or the wind's on my back, you can forget it
Right.
because it gives me more endurance as a middle distance runner because
Right.
there's no resistance.
Yes.
But if you're long distance inclined, it would be to your advantage running against a guy like me because it makes you feel like you're running a little uphill with the wind against you. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah. So if I didn't have that restriction, my speed endurance is going to take over, and I'm gonna have the advantage.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I used to take advantage of that. Whenever there was no wind, I think most of the time ran it wasn't. Two of the times I ran, it was no wind, and two of the times I ran, the wind was kind of in my face.
Right.
But I still managed to win it,
Yeah.
because um, I would just run fast downhill and hit the flat and have a fast rhythm.
Ah.
But if you stayed with me, you may have found that, well, I can give him a hard time going over the hill. You
Right.
know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I made sure I got far enough that you wasn't figuring that out. That was one of the tricks, you know what I mean?
Uh,
Make sure you establish a lead so that who's behind you don't figure out what you're actually doing, you know? Yeah,
yeah. So,
you're
so,
running.
so looking back at your previous Bermuda Day half marathons, is there a particular moment or memory that stands out as especially meaningful or challenging? And what did you learn from that experience?
Well, I would like to say this, that May 24th wasn't on my radar.
Hmm.
The Olympics, attempting to be a world class 800-meter runner. Um, I was fortunate in that in the boycott meet in 1980,
Uh-huh.
I placed high in that final and beat the best Kenyans.
Right.
But the disappointing part is I never actually ran in the Olympics. And you know, I my goal was to be the best I could be on the track,
Uh-huh.
not on the road. And really, it wasn't until a conversation was had with my grandfather, who I was made to understand the importance of the Bermuda Day Marathon, as we called it back there. We called it, and I still tend to make the same mistake. May 24th
Right.
marathon, and but anyway, in my conversation with him, he gave me a history lesson because remember, he grew up in segregation when, people like him at that time wasn't able to really compete at a high level and be selected to compete at a high level.
Right.
He was the best runner of his time, even though he, on paper, didn't win May 24th. But, you know, he told me, and I'm told by others, that he was the dominant runner in the Army back then,
Ah.
which predated May 24th.
Right.
And anyway, because remember, when I was talking to my grandfather, he was in his 90s.
Right. Right.
And he was explaining to me that, May 24th was the important thing for him. And he always wished and hoped I would win it,
Right.
because he never got the chance to.
Right.
And of course, most people knew him as a cricketer,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he was also a good runner. And it kind of gave me a sense that maybe I better try this event.
Right.
And I still wasn't sure in my mind, but eventually it grew on me.
Mm.
And when I placed second behind Gary Wilkinson, really was third. Well, it was really second, but it was actually third because remember we had a situation similar to what I had with Terrence,
Right.
where a runner ran that didn't fit the rules for the race, which is
Yeah.
you have to be a local resident.
Right. Right.
And so this guy came, I think, from Sweden or somewhere. He slipped into the island, and anyway, he led and won the race, and Gary Wilkinson came second, and I was third.
Right.
So a lot of people, of course, ultimately Gary was given that. He was given the first place status.
Right.
I was given the reserve status, and that was my first or second year in college. And I guess similar to what we saw with Ryan, except I. But anyway, people always talk about the dynamics of that race and how it affected the way we ran.
Yeah.
But to me, it affected me too because it made Gary, who was fitter than me, had more endurance, was better prepared for that race, really have the edge on me because even though we was chasing a guy that wasn't supposed to be in the race, it was more to Gary's advantage.
Right.
Whereas me, my plan was to sit on Gary's shoulder and try to outkick him at the end.
Right.
Now, again, it would have been a tall order because realistically, Gary was well trained and had the endurance
Yes.
and
Yes.
was prepared for May 24. Whereas me, I was just jumping in the race and
Mhm.
figuring, well, I'm just gonna race like I race in college. I'm just gonna stay on the guy's shoulder and out kick him. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
But of course, like I said, the Swedish guy, he changed the whole dynamics of the race, and the rest is history. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but I certainly give credit to Gary because Gary was my mentor even as a junior racing on the track, and
Right.
he actually is a large part of the reason why I performed well as a junior.
Right.
Racing against senior athletes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, but really, if it's anything special for me in that race, it's really I guess when 27th Century Boutique started to sponsor me,
Right.
I felt an obligation to win for the first time for them.
Right.
And the funny thing is, I overhauled Cal Bean
Yeah.
and won the race for the first time. But it was really the second year that I won it that I was so dominant. That was really special
Hmm.
because it was almost like, well, this one's for the sponsor. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
And I
Yes.
kind of the first one was for my grandfather. The second one was for my sponsor.
Right.
Kurt, God bless his heart,
Uh-huh.
Kurt Bartram of 27th Century supported me all them years as a runner. Sponsored me. Him, Applebee's Garden and Camp, and tools and equipment. And now
Right.
forget that. But that second race was for the sponsors, and I think when I got to tools equipment, which was en route just before we got to Bernard Park, that's the year I ran a
Yes.
109 for. I think it was just over the official half marathon distance
Right.
before they changed it to go around. But anyway, I ran a 109 on that course, and I kind of threw my hat in the air, which had all my sponsors on the hat,
Right.
as a gesture of gratefulness
Right.
to them. To me, a lot of people probably wondered what the heck I was doing
Yes.
when
Yes. Yes.
I made that turn by the youth center. But that's what I was doing. I was throwing my hat in the air as a gesture of thank you to the sponsors.
Right.
Um, so you know, that was special to me because without that support, really, I wouldn't have been able to go overseas and compete and make it
Right.
to the '88 Olympics. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
Uh, when obviously being one after your first win, there was a lot of talk about you being the favorite and so forth. How did you manage to control that level of expectation? Did you put any pressure on yourself, like I gotta win this second time in a row, and then I've got to win that third one? Which it happened a year after that, but the expectations. How did you control just that? That pressure?
The level I was running at then, I also was realistic about my chances, and I knew during a Pan Am or Olympic year, May 24th was going to be less of a priority.
Yes.
So realistically, the only time I really ran well in May 24th, other than the last time,
Mm.
um, it was all calculated. It was like, well, this year I could try to win the event.
Right.
The second time, it was more like I'm gonna win the event.
Right.
Uh, then the next year was like, well, I better hope for the best because really I'm gonna use it only as training because
Mm.
I'm focused. In another month or two, I got a major CAC championships or NAM games to compete in.
Right.
And the last thing I need to do is gain all this endurance and not have the speed to run the 800 or the 1500.
Yeah.
And I think they're just kind of in that predicament now,
Right. Right.
And so my priority was different. So realistically, I had to sacrifice May 24th for track.
Right.
And then, it happened right up to '88. 89, 90, I just couldn't get back the same rhythm.
Mm.
And then 91 came, and I got in a little bit of a debate with a gentleman, and who insisted I was finished. He was right. He was right. You know, he insisted, Mike, your May 24th days are behind you, you know.
Mm.
And I knew I weren't training kind of the way I was before that.
Right.
And he just kind of aggravated me a bit to the point where he was insistent that I didn't have the talent. Now, it was
Right.
all right to tell me I weren't fit
Right.
and I weren't ready, but it was another thing to tell me that, yeah, well, the guys coming along with you are more talented. You never had that type of talent. And I said, oh, yeah. I said, well, who's first a minute? That is collegiate guy. You'll never beat him. I said, oh, you're talking about Terrence? He says, yeah. I said, well, I helped to coach Terrence when he was a youngster coming along. And you're right, he's real good. But I don't think he's ready for me yet. And he insisted, man, you're talking craziness. I said, you know something? I called Tucker that night, Gina Tucker's father, and
Yeah.
said, look, man, you got a number for me? And Tucker was like that. If he knew he was a top contender of axe winner, he'd break every rule to get you in the race. You know? And if he was breaking the race, the reality is he was the owner of the event. So
Yeah.
and they still are, you know. But anyway, I kind of was able to get in the event last minute, and of course the rest is history because I told the story how I kind of ran a suicide race. But that's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
a lot of it was about. A lot of it was about, hey,
Prove
you know,
somebody wrong.
staying determined because somebody was talking bad about me. But we joke about that to this day. I won't say the gentleman's name, but
Right.
to this
Yeah.
day we laugh about that. You know, yeah. So
Yeah.
it was all in the fun. You know, what
Oh,
the heck?
definitely. Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah. The final question, beyond the competition itself, what did, and you already spoke about it a bit, you know, talking to your grandfather, what did participating in the Bermuda Day Half Marathon mean to you personally as a Bermudian athlete? And what message did you hope your performances sent to aspiring young people who now look to run the race and also to win the race?
Yeah. I grew up in an era when it was segregation, the
Mm-hmm.
tail end of segregation, you know. And I'm probably the first dominant runner post segregation, or close to segregation,
Mm-hmm.
I guess would be correct to say, because there's been a lot of runners post segregation.
Right.
But at that time, there was still rifts and there were still some problems when it
Right.
came to whites in the sport trying to manage the sport
Right.
and blacks fighting to manage the sport. And as an athlete, I was caught in the middle of a lot of that.
Right.
So I was very vocal publicly about how I felt. And the funny thing is, it's normal today because that's where all the superstars are coming off the track. But I was vocal about, if you really want to develop as an athlete, you need to be focused on the track. Of course, the road runners resented that statement,
Yeah.
and they were mostly white at the time, and with the exception of a few who understood where I was coming from. And also remember this: I was also influenced heavily by Henzi, Cal Bean,
Yes.
and the guys of that era that ran during segregation. You know,
Mhm.
and I always felt an obligation to carry on what they done. You know
Right.
what I mean? And so with me, it was important that I make black people feel good
Right.
about something. You know what I mean? Because some of our youth weren't feeling good about you know, their accomplishments in comparison to whites back then. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yes.
And it was a time when it was important for blacks to show that they are just as good.
Mm.
So I just felt obligated that to represent Bermudians and to represent Bermudian blacks um, at that time, and it was just important to me to show my colleagues that we're just as good as anybody else.
Right.
And so that added determination with me. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And that had nothing to do with anything me being anti-white, because I had white friends, white colleagues that ran with me. Was even coached by a white guy as a junior, Jeff Pan.
Mm-hmm.
So but still, with your own people, you always feel an obligation that you also got to represent them too, and show other ethnic groups that you guys have the class or you have the ability as well, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how it was then. I don't see a lot of that now. I think today's runner won't feel that pressure as much, although I would imagine there's still some within your own community who have expectations about you. But
Right.
it's not the same racial um feelings
Yes. Yes.
that
Yes.
that we had back then. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
I was fortunate to see it change a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, I mean, there's still some problems, but they're minor in comparison to what we dealt with, or what I dealt with back then. Maybe I was just too vocal. You know, yeah, no, but hey,
Rebel Watson.
yeah, yeah. But I thought I had something to fight for.
Right.
And
Right.
I could only go by how I was treated,
Yes.
or how, the type of things that happened. Like I can remember one time in May 24th, Pat Lake was living, God bless her heart, she'd be witness to this. But at the water station by Albert Foundry, um, I was coming along there, and the guy that was handing water, when I reached out for it, pulled his hand away, not to give me water.
Oh wow.
And Pat Lake ran out real quick and gave me a cup of water, and I left there, her and the gentleman argument. Big tall white guy. To this day, I don't remember who he was, but
Right.
but but at least it was something going on there. The other thing was coming down Harbor Road and they had the sprinklers on.
Yes.
It's like, oh, here comes Watson. Turn the sprinklers off.
Oh boy.
But they don't know that's what I wanted, because one thing I learned about going through those sprinklers, man, they get your feet wet, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
you got more difficulty. Yeah, so it wasn't a big deal, but
Right.
I was used to it. I was used to things like that happening, because unfortunately to them, I was representing the black community. You know what I
Right.
mean? And they
Right.
wanted Tony Ryan or one of the white heroes to win.
Yes.
But I mean, I caught remnants of it. You could imagine what Handsy guys like Handsy and Cal Bean would have had to put
Oh
up
yeah.
with.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And the reality is, historically speaking, because that was the only real avenue for blacks during segregation, who knew they may not get picked to go to the Olympics or whatever
Right.
before a white guy. They tended to put focus on
24th of May.
Danny Wolver May. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And that's why we know so much about the history of the Henses and the Calbeans and
Yeah.
the twins, the Virgil twins, and
Right.
you can go right back to Mac Smith, and you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, even his son, Mac Jr. and
Right.
and but during those days, that was the only Olympics that the Bermudian black community had. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we heard the stories of Goo Gip, and you name it,
Mhm.
yeah.
All right. Well, brother, thank you very, very much. And to be honest, thank you very much for your contribution on the Bermuda Day Half Marathon, because You added so much excitement to it, even before you would win your first time. Just the fact that you were coming back and everybody had all this built up. Oh, this is the year. This is the year. This is the year. And it was so funny because I remember the year you stopped.
Yeah,
I said,
yeah,
if he keeps running like this, it's gonna break.
yeah.
He's either gonna break every record or pass out. One of the two is gonna happen.
Yeah, yeah, I guess in my mind, I thought I was going to break a world record. Yeah. I mean, I remember one occasion, me and Cal,
Yeah.
real fast. Here with this story. Me and Cal, Ted Waldraven, a Canadian guy, was winning everything in Bermuda that year. And
Right.
for some reason, I hadn't raced him much. And I don't know if Cal had raced him. But I remember, matter of fact, I think that may have been the first year I won it. But I remember him being the favorite, or
Right.
being thought to be the favorite, and we was coming down, approaching Southampton Princess hill, that hill that takes you up. And
Waterlock.
I remember this guy was flying,
Right.
and Cal was there, and we was like, "Dang, we're gonna find a way to slow this guy down." And either that or we're gonna just concede.
Right.
We started trash talking, and I got to a point where I said, "Well, either I'm gonna have to um, do something, or either take the lead or drop off the pace or whatever." But I knew I was hurting a bit
Right.
at that point. And the funny thing about running a half marathon, you have to be patient because you have those moments.
Mhm.
And you'll recover, and
Right.
you'll start to feel good again if you're in shape.
Right.
But at that point, I think we had come flying out of Somerset, and it was like this guy was lowering the pace, and me and Cal, we were trash talking, and we was like, "Hey man, this guy's flying," and we wanted him to hear what we were saying, of course.
Right.
And we were saying, "Hey man, yeah, what you think, Mike, about the pace?" And of course, I was playing it off. I said, "I used to going a little faster." But hey, let's just stay here and relax a little bit, man. Maybe this guy knows something we don't know,
Right.
And then Cal looked at me like I was crazy and said, "Man, what you talking about? This guy is flying, right?" And then I said, "Look, Cal, look, you take the inside, I'm gonna take the outside, man. We gotta speed this pace up. We got a hill coming. Let's get over this hill."
Right.
And I don't know what came over me to say that. And Cal, he played the game. The
Right.
cow went to the inside. I went to the outside. We went flying over that hill. Excuse me. Anyway, we're working hard. Approach Burnt House Hill. Of course, you got a major hill now.
Yes.
So we're both struggling to get over that hill now. So we hit Harbor Red, we recover, and we're flying down. Now it's me and Cal. But of course, we didn't know what happened to Ted Waldron. We were
Right.
just, at that point, just racing each other.
Right.
And of course, I think Cal had beat Leon Matthews the prior year.
Yes.
And I was saying, nah, I knew Cal was pretty good. I'm going to overhaul Cal. So I focused on him, but I kept worrying about Ted Waldron. I think both of us was. And it was making us go faster and stronger and, get stronger and stronger in the race because we had to make sure we put him away.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Anyway, I won the race. Cal was second. And last I heard, Ted Waldron stopped down by the Princess and sat on the wall. I don't know what happened to him, you know what I mean? But we certainly took the confidence out of him, I think, when we decided to make that move. But really, he was the one lowering the pace.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
Right. Yeah.
so stories like that, man, that I think make that event. And, you just have to take a chance sometimes, and Earl, I certainly would like to thank people like you, man, because without your commentary, and that's why I like doing the commentary, now in the race.
Right.
I thought maybe I would try to be like Sir Stanley and run the race forever. And I said, something, it's a lot easier winning the race on that truck. Yeah.
It's a lot easier sitting on for the 13.1 than running the 13.1, right?
Exactly. So I figure it's a lot easier for me to talk about the race and talk about the runners than to
Right.
be actually running the race. But
Yes, yes,
but it's guys like you that make it exciting, really, because you give coverage and exposure to the event. And
right,
and
right.
I mean, when you think about it, what that race has become today. It's everybody. It's not just the
Yeah,
runners. It's you guys that video it and
right.
put it
Yeah.
on the radio, and those things matter in terms of making this event better and better and keeping it
Keep our history good.
national tradition. Yeah,
Yes,
you know,
yes, yes.
our tradition, our unique tradition.
That's right.
Of
That's right.
running. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Of course, the great part is, thank God, the then Bermuda Track and Field Association, now BINA, was able to reinstate a lot of those guys from the past
right.
and make their professional status equal with the runner today.
Yes, yes.
Because really there was never no real professionals in distance running
Right,
anyway at that
right.
time. Now there is, and there
Yeah,
probably was a few back then, but
yeah.
those guys were certainly at that level, and rightly so. Now the event's open to everybody, and
Right,
look at the numbers. I mean, you're going from a race that's traditionally had maybe 50 runners,
right,
and most of them were black, because it became our race, because although historically it wasn't, it was us challenging the foreign,
right.
the local residents. They
Yes,
were army fellas in the beginning, but the reality is the race responded on that, and that's why I've always objected to people thinking it's solely a black event.
right,
It's actually Bermuda's event. It's a
right.
championship between all that live here,
Yes,
and color is not important in
right.
terms of who wins or who loses it
Yeah,
today. You know what I mean? But at
yeah,
some point in our history, it became strictly black people's event,
right.
because they didn't get selected so readily to go to the Olympics over weights back then.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's nice when you look at what it's evolved to and the type of
right.
numbers
Yeah,
that entered this man. We're talking about 1,000 people. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
And growing and
Yeah.
growing. So
Well,
yeah,
I'm gonna tell you now. I'm gonna tell you now. You're probably gonna want to watch. You're gonna want. You can. It's gonna be interesting at the front of the pack for the men, but it's just gonna be equally impressive with the women. I predict there's going to be someone in the top 3 or top 4 that you probably haven't heard from before. That's going to surprise a lot of people. So just keep that in mind when they come through the finish line. I'll text you. I'll text you the name on the day, and then you would see what I'm talking about when it happens.
yes, yes, yes. I can agree with you, because I may be thinking of some of the same, or that same name. Yeah, on the woman's side,
Yeah.
but on the men's side, it's possible too. If
Definitely.
people
It's gonna be a battle. It's gonna be a battle. Who feels good on the day will come out on top.
yeah, yeah,
And I look forward to this particular year of battle. So especially after
yeah,
what we saw last year, if we get a quarter of that with three or four people, man, oh
yeah.
man, the excitement is right back in the race itself. So
Yeah, yeah, because there's nothing worse than doing the commentary talking about one person.
one person, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, it'd be great if it's a pack, and they're
Oh yeah,
very competitive. Yeah, yeah,
it
that's
should be
right.
fun. This year should be fun. All
Yeah.
right. Well,
Looking
we'll see
forward to
you
it,
on
Earl.
Friday,
And
brother.
nice talking with you, buddy.
Yes, indeed. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yes, enjoy this forever.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Stop
People
coming
who
here
don't
this
know,
year.
me and Earl grew up together.
That's right.
And not even a quarter mile away from each other.
That's right. Let's throw a rock.
Yes,
All
that's
right,
right.
Mike. Take it easy, right? Have a
You
good
too,
one.
Earl.
All
All
right.
right, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.